Mod Stew has cleaned up a ton of quest requirements, tidying up the enormous tangled web that previously existed, making it much more streamlined and coherent. Before we get into that, couple of quick announcements. Game Jam is back around for February. This is a time where the JMods have an opportunity to spend a week exploring their personal projects, sometimes community suggested, that has a chance of becoming brand new content in the game. Tons of things have been released through Game Jam, but do note that not everything is guaranteed. So we'll see that roll out throughout the week, likely on the JMods' various Twitter accounts. Also with today's updates, if you have the cash, today you'll be able to dye the first Necromancer outfits with the various dyes you find around Gielinor through treasure trails and other means. So if you can afford it, I'm looking forward to seeing some outfits out there running around the game world. That said, let's take a look at Mod Stew's quest requirement cleanup and see what he's changed. He has lowered or removed narratively and mechanically unnecessary requirements in around 40 quests. Another slice of ham no longer requires the dig site quest, but now requires goblin diplomacy. And he's added archaeology VFX when digging up the Dorjish train station to make it easier to see. Animal magnetism, Ghost Ahoy, Haunted Mine, Making History, Rum Deal, and Wanted no longer require Priest in Peril, only access to Mauritania. As a first resort, no longer requires Zogre Flesh Eaters, and they moved Chief Teth's chat options. As Anadra's quest no longer requires 58 prayer, and they updated some eligibility checks. Back to My Roots no longer requires Fairy Tale 1 and 1 small favor. Between a Rock no longer requires 30 defense. Instead of 5k XP lamp on quest completion will require 30 defense. Mining and smithing XP have been converted to lamps, and they can be reclaimed from maze storage if not rubbed. A new Master Quest Cape lore achievement has been added to keep track of the lamps. Blood Runs Deep no longer requires hard Fremnik area tasks. Branches of Darkmere no longer requires Legends Quest. Brink of Extinction no longer requires 80 defense. Children of Ma no longer requires Fate of the Gods. Karshai no longer spoils most of the 6th Age if you have not accepted Children of Ma quest. Curse of Arav downgraded requiring Troll Romance to requiring access to Trollheim, and no longer requires Shades of Morton. However, does require Temple of Ikov. The special quest requirement Fully Restore Senlitin now appends your current percent progress rebuilding the mummy, and remove the pickaxe and sacred oil from required items. Curse of Zaros mini quest now requires Temple of Ikov, and Dalak the Magician will no longer be in the upper level of Edgeville Monastery, so no longer requiring potentially 31 prayer. Dealing with Skabaras no longer requires Zogre Flesh Eaters. The Feud. Ugthanki Dung can be acquired without completing the Feud, and Kerner can give you information on where to get it. Camel Troughs have an option to fill them when carrying red hot sauce, and they clarified the text after accepting Dealing with Skabaras to make it clear you need to climb the ladder east of the High Priest to continue. Defender of Varrock no longer requires Demon Slayer and Temple of Ikov, as well as Garden of Tranquility. Desert Slayer Dungeon mini quest no longer requires 70 Slayer to start, but it is mentioned in the quest overview's combat description. Desert Treasure, the Priest in Peril requirement, is removed and no longer requires Tourist Trap, Temple of Ikov, and Waterfall quest. And they updated Azanadra's ancient model to the newer ghostly Azanadra. In Devious Minds no longer requires Troll Stronghold, lowered the Wanted requirement to Recruitment Drive. Dream Mentor no longer requires Edgar's Ruse, and the Orenomancer now gives you a Dream Vial herb so you don't have to get Goutweed, and no longer requires 85 combat. Edgar's Ruse, they changed player dialogue that used to refer to the plot of an older version of Druidic Ritual. Enter the Abyss mini quest lowered the Rune Mysteries to level 5 rune crafting. Fairy Tale Part 1 no longer potentially requires Jungle Potion. Fairy Tale 3 no longer requires 37 summoning. Gnarly no longer bites you if your summoning is lower than 37. No longer requires 59 magic, and using the Fairy Wand to heal patches no longer requires 59 magic. Family Crest, the quest overview now displays 59 magic as a suggestion. Fremnik Sagas removed the unabridged requirements in the quest overview into suggested. Hero's Quest no longer requires Druidic Ritual, Lost City, and Merlin's Crystal. Hero's Welcome lowered the Taibuanai Trio and Master Barbarian Skilling to access to the Ancient Cavern from Barbarian Training. Horror from the Deep added Bar Crawl mini quest requirement. In Memory of Myrique added Legend Quest to make the Holy Water for Safalan's statue. No longer requires you to wait 10 days to complete each of Veliaf's Myrique statues. King Ransom no longer requires 65 defense, but a lamp is issued that will require 65 to use. No longer requiring 45 magic, also a lamp has been added requiring 45 magic to use. Once again, you can claim these from May in the quest caravan, so find them in Varrock. In the Legacy of Sirge's, Desert Treasure is now a suggested quest. Legends quest no longer requires Family Crest, Underground Pass, Waterfall quest, and lowered the Shile Village to Jungle Potion. In the Lost Toys mini quest, they lowered Lord of Vampirion to Branches of Darkmere. In Lost Tribe no longer requires Goblin Diplomacy. When reading the book in Varrock Library, Reldo will suggest talking to the generals to learn about the Dorjishan tribe. Reldo now asks you to bring him a restored Dominion device at 84 archaeology instead of every time you talk to him at 42 archaeology. General Bentnose and General Wartface dialogue tree has been rewrote, and remove the pickaxe from required items in the quest overview. Love Story no longer requires Recipe for Disaster, Seeing Ceramic Vars, and some of Xenovivia's dialogue is now conditional. In Lunar Diplomacy, you'll no longer require Shile Village quest. For Mighty Fall, they changed My Big Arms Adventure and Hunt for Sirach from being requirements to being suggested. My Arms Big Adventure no longer requires The Feud, and Merkali no longer requires and deducts 60% Taiwanese cleanup favor when my arm gathers gout tubers. In One of a Kind, they lowered King Ransom to Holy Grail. One Small Favor no longer requires Druidic Ritual, Rune Mysteries, and some text has been changed to reflect how pot lids work. Recipe for Disaster, Freeing the Lumbridge Sage, no longer requires Big Chompy Bird Hunting, Biohazard, Demon Slayer, Murder Mystery, Nature Spirit, Priest in Peril, Relentless Ghosts, or Witch's House. In the Sage's Egg Puzzle, updated King Lathis, Pirate Pete, and Hetty to match their overworld appearance. Changed Isluin's quiz to Ceramic and other White Knights, and changed the Valorina quiz to Thessalia and similar names. Ritual of Marjorat lowered the Fairy Tale 3 to Fairy Tale 2, and lowered Rocking Out to Cabin Fever. Rumdeal no longer requires Zogre Flesh Eater. Swan Song no longer requires One Small Favor. Mastercraft's dialogue is now conditional. Lowered Guardian of Tranquility from a requirement to a suggestion. No longer requires 101 quest points, and moved the Wise Old Man's dialogue in his dialogue tree. In Tale of Two Cats, removed Gertrude Cat requirement. In Throne of Miscellanea no longer requires Hero's Quest. Wanted no longer requires Lost Tribe. Replaced the step where you find a bone spear to a step finding a rune plate, and no longer requires 33 quest points. While Guthrie Sleeps no longer requires Hand in the Sand. Some of Betty's dialogue has been rewrote, no longer requires King Ransom, and they added Shiloh Village and Temple of Ikov. And lastly, in Zogre Flesh Eaters, Jungle Potion is now a suggested quest. Anyways, if you enjoyed the video so far, please hit that like button. If you're not subscribed yet and you'd like to stay up to date on all things RuneScape related, then hit that subscribe button. Thank you. That said, we're going to finally close out with some patch notes, so let's jump into them and get started. Looking at the game jam, the Makeover Mage interface can now be accessed via a new button at the top right of the Appearance tab in the Customization interface. Selecting this button will now open the Makeover Mage interface without having to go and talk to the mage themselves, allowing players to change their body type and skin color. Players will still need to require to speak to the Makeover Mage directly for the Land of Goblins and Evil Dave's Big Day Out quests. Looking at some engine changes, fix some UI elements not displaying properly when using interface scale factors below 100%. Updated the level of detail system. Various back-end changes have been made to support upcoming features, and fix crashes on Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 Android devices. Lastly, for Mac OS, in the coming months, they're going to be updating minimum requirements for Mac OS users to continue to enjoy RuneScape. Players will need to upgrade Mac OS 10.13, High Sierra, or newer to continue playing, as it stopped receiving security updates from Apple in December 2020. So they would encourage players to consider updating for the general security of their device. They're also going to provide further details when this update will go live, and a minimum requirement for the Mac OS hardware will be updated to reflect this accordingly. Anyways, that's it for your patch notes. Links to everything discussed in this video down in the description below. Head on over there to check them out. If you missed last week's video, it will be on screen right now so you can see it there, and I'll look forward to seeing you there. And if not, see you at the next RuneScape coverage video. I am out. Aloha.